All right, Business Freedom Podcast listeners, welcome back for another edition here. And you are in for just an awesome time here to be able to chat with a guy that's been in the business for 13 years, seen a couple cycles, sells a few $100 million worth of real estate this year, and has agreed, and I'll get him to verify that he's going to share the good, the bad, the ugly of his business growth journey. Justin Havre, and I teased you before I got on. You know, it's kind of like what's the something about Mary where they say Brett Favre. So
Yeah.
there's Justin Havre in out of Canada, Calgary. And man, thanks for making the time. I know you're a busy dude. You've got a lot on your plate. Just for making the time today. Why don't you start off with just a little bit, like the 2-minute, like why listen to this podcast?
You know what? I think it's important for anyone that obviously wants to or thinking about perhaps starting a team. Starting a team nowadays seems to be like the so-called sexy thing in real estate, and everybody wants to create one or be on one. And I think that, if anybody's thinking of doing that, they should listen to this podcast and maybe they can take a nugget or two and they can decide whether or not they want to actually start a team, because it's not as appealing as many people think.
Yeah. And there's some people in the midst of it that have set it up the wrong way. And so let me ask the question I ask every one of our guests. Justin, are you prepared to share the good, the bad, the ugly about your business growth journey?
Oh, definitely. Be happy to share.
If you said no, I would just shut the whole thing down and nobody would ever hear this. So that's good. It would have been awkward if you said no. So let's talk about, I think you got into the business in 2005, and in 13 years, you've gone from 0 to 300 million, which is like, there's a lot going on there. Can you break it down into a few different phases of growth where we can kind of deconstruct each phase? Because I think there's a lot of folks, 85% of our industry, I think in North America probably, they don't have an assistant, so we're probably speaking to a portion of the 85% that hasn't even hired a part-time admin yet. And then there's folks that have done it the wrong way and they're just failing quickly. And then there are big teams that have done it the wrong way, which I think we can serve. So what is that first phase of growth? Take us back to the early days of getting into the business.
Yeah. So when I got into the business in 2005, I did it the wrong way. I'll admit that right now. But what I did was, I came from an IT background, and one of the first things that I did was, built a website. And believe it or not, the very first website that I had, I advertised it in the back of a newspaper. And that's how I was generating traffic to it. Because here in Canada, we had MLS.ca, which is now Realtor.ca, and it used to take 24 hours in order for listings to get pushed onto that portal. And I had a website that would have the new listings within an hour, and we had really big shortage of inventory in our market where, we were down to 700 listings at one point in a market of about 1.2 million people. So people were scrambling to obviously get to the listings first. So that's kind of how I got started, generating some leads and that kind of stuff. And I had a big obsession with online lead generation, rankings, and that kind of stuff. So, I should have hired an admin, but I didn't. I started basically by, handing out referrals to other agents in the office. And it wasn't until 2012 when I went to a conference down in Miami, and I met some other guys that were doing it pretty big time in the online lead generation. And we were sitting around a table, and they asked me how many leads I was generating on a daily basis, and I said, I don't know, 150 or so. And they kind of looked at me and they're like, how many agents are you working with? I'm like 5. They kind of did a double take and told me I needed at least 100 agents. And I'm like, what are you guys on, right? Like, I'm fine. And So that's kind of what opened my eyes to all the opportunities that I was missing out on.
Yeah.
And that's when I actually went and hired my first admin, because before that I was simply just trying to manage the marketing and all the stuff, actively selling myself and, handing out leads and trying to keep my head above water. And I mean, I was still doing pretty good business. I mean, I was number one agent in a brokerage of 700 agents with only a few years of experience under my belt. And so hired them in. We started building out systems and processes. And in December of 2012, we went from 6 agents to 28 agents in January of 2013. Want to talk about a gong show?
Wow.
So, lots of learning and that kind of stuff during that whole process. And, still learning to this day. But, in January 2013, we generated 4,200 leads in a month with no auto assignment. They were all manually assigned and all that stuff. So, yeah, it was pretty hectic.
Yeah. So, and how did you manage? So from 2005 to 2012, it was you doing some personal production, but also just sending leads out to referral agents, essentially.
Yep.
And so, how did you manage? Maybe tell us a little bit about your personal, like, wife, kids. What did that look like at that time? How crazy were the hours? Like, let's dig into what it actually looked like.
It was very hectic, and I'll say this. I mean, I was married at the time and ended up getting divorced in 2009. And, I accept that, I had my part in, obviously, for that marriage to fail and, constantly being the driver and working. And I had the mindset at that time that, I wanted to, build up a good nest egg, start a family. And then once your kids kind of slow down a bit and, going out for anniversary dinner and, saying, do you mind if we just kind of cut this short? I got to go write an offer. And that kind of stuff. I mean, as she at the time said, oh yeah, that's okay. But, it's not okay. So lots of lessons in and around that I carried on moving forward after the fact. But, it was in 2009 when kind of went through that. It's a pretty difficult time for me, for sure. And January 2010, when the brokerage announced that I was like the number one agent in the brokerage of 700 agents, I sat there in an empty house and sat on the couch and I actually cried. I'm like, wow, this is what success is supposed to be. Pretty empty feeling when you have nobody to share that with. And, I think a lot of us, we get into the business with the mindset that, we can earn a lot of money and have a lot of fun, but at the same time, we also get very addicted to the deal, right? And the hunger for more, and that kind of stuff. So nowadays, I'm, one of the first things that I will tell any new agent that's getting into the business is, pick up your phone and your spouse, partner, girlfriend, boyfriend, husband, wife, they're your number one appointment. And don't ever change that, because if you can have that good habit when you get into the business, and it's probably the most difficult habit to break down the road because you get so programmed in a certain way. So I think that, if you want to have a successful career as well as a successful partnership, you also got to make sure that your partner feels important and part of your team as well. Because, a lot of times if you keep canceling, plans that you have with your family, whether you're going to a soccer game with the kids or football or baseball or whatever, the more you do that, I mean, your kids and your family, they'll remember, dad was busy working while, I was at my baseball game. Yeah. So I think that one of the things that people should really do is kind of make that your number one priority. Clients, I mean, you just simply just tell them, hey, you know what, I'm booked tonight. How about tomorrow morning or tomorrow evening, or just give them some other alternative times, right? But that was my number one takeaway from that whole period was, you know, the importance of setting boundaries for yourself and your family.
Yeah, looking back, I appreciate you sharing that. And you know, it's not the exciting thing to share, and it's reality. You have these families that have a real estate agent as one of the spouses, and conventional success. I mean, let alone your level. I mean, that's a level of, like, I wouldn't even know what to do with 4,000 leads in a month. Like, I would, you know, like, so I mean, you have this sort of, I want to get into the mindset of, you know, people getting into like paid traffic now and thinking it's a thing. It's like, you know, it's a little bit late. 2005 was cool, you know, like that's trend setting. Now it's like, okay, well, Zillow is not our friend anymore. You know, it's like you're a little late to the game. But looking back on that time, and one of the questions I like to ask, and it's an interesting perspective, you know, because you have the ability to look back. I struggled with it, you know, enjoying the ride. You know, it's really, how do you, we can go into our businesses and we can kick ass in our businesses. We can make things move. We can, in your case, you're top of the continent probably in doing the thing you were doing back then. And it was this gratifying thing. And then it's easy to, relationships are hard, like kids are hard, you know, they don't give you anything back, and a marriage is hard. And but what advice would you give for someone who's like kind of up to their eyeballs in business and they're not tending to other important areas? What advice would you give them to enjoy the ride? I mean, is it really just setting a standard? Like, what advice do you give your top agents that are struggling?
Well, you know, I think that it has to do a lot with the mindset. And, you know, we all may think that when we get into the business, being successful is going to make us feel a certain way. And you know what? The reality is it doesn't. It doesn't change how you feel. It doesn't make you happier. You know, if anything that I can give advice to around that, if you can shift your mindset more to in a state of where your career is your vehicle to create memorable life experiences for yourself and your family. That's the byproduct of getting success and achieving what you can. I mean, let's face it. I mean, real estate is an incredible career where you can connect with so many incredible people, clients, colleagues, vendors, and within your community. But at the same time, you can also have the freedom to do some pretty incredible things with your family, and you know, create a life full of experiences for your kids that they will always cherish. And that's one of the things that you can never take away, right? So I think kind of shifting around that, and that's one of the advice that we give to our agents on our team too, is, you know what, like, what is the one thing that you want to experience in 2019? Like an experience with your family or your kids. And that becomes the motivator and the driver. But at the same time, remind them to also take time off and unplug. And, you know, I would say that's one of the benefits of being on a team where you can have other team members kind of step in and look after your business while you go away. Because, you know, as an individual agent, you go away, I mean, you're constantly checking emails, text messages, all that stuff. And it's hard to be in the moment with your family.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's, I want to get into the business and what it looks like and how you run it and all of that. But let's look back over, you know, really at any point, is there a moment or two or a period of time where, outside of the personal stuff that you share, but from a business standpoint, where it really was a failure? You know, I think in our industry, I don't think there's a lot of like really successful guys and girls that are running at your level. Well, not many are running at your level. Even if they were, I don't think they're going around teaching, others from their failures. What's one or two times where you're like, man, I got that wrong, or it was just too much, or you considered giving up? You think of any moments like that?
I've had a few. A couple of years ago, I had, it was kind of a bit of a toxic culture within our group and within our team. And I had three of my, top listing agents. They left on January 1. And for 2017, I had close to 80% turnover on the team in a year. And, a lot of that was, my responsibility, and I'm to blame for that because, I'm the leader of the team. And essentially, if there's any sort of negativity within the team, I also made it's the unfortunate mistake of mixing business and pleasure. But contrary to that, it was also one of the greatest lessons for myself and the business as well, but had a big turnover. And I basically, there was a point of time, I would say probably February, March of 2017, where I was kind of questioning what I was doing. Like, do I want to carry on with this? And, again, I had to look in the mirror and ask myself, why am I doing this? And really today, looking back at where we were a year and a half ago to where we are today, it's night and day. And, you got to go through those challenging times when, your business is struggling. And, obviously when you're running a team and you have all these leads and opportunities, you need people. So focusing on essentially the experience that your agents have when they're on your team and connecting with them on a deeper level. And you also can't run a team when you're, essentially running it from top down. You got to kind of shift that where you're running from bottom up kind of leadership where everybody feels they're safe and they can be vulnerable and express challenges that they have, and you help support them grow and work through those challenges. And, it's obviously a learning experience for any one of us that's running a team because you essentially get to manage people and their emotions. And then you also need to manage your own emotions. And, as team leaders, we're probably more invested into our teams and businesses than anyone else because many of us live and breathe this 24/7. And we're just so passionate about what we do. But, we can't take it personal when people leave. Because I'll share myself. Like I've cried many times when team members have left the team because, you build these special bonds with the people and you obviously care about everybody that's on the team. And it's tough in a selfish way when people leave, but at the same time, you want them to obviously spread their wings and give it a go and wish them all the best. And a saying that I really love is, it's not how you say hello, it's how you say goodbye. Right? And I think that's really important in business as well as in personal lives, where we can, again, learn to manage our own emotions and at the same time help the people that you are working with when they go through their challenges. We're all humans. We all have all sorts of emotions, and we all know that this business can be a storm of emotions, not only within ourselves, but with our clients. And that's what residential real estate really is. It's buying on emotion, it's selling on emotion, and then we get the agents on the other side that can be pretty emotional in a tough, challenging market. So, no, it's quite the interesting journey.
Yeah, and it's maybe it was something around that time frame because I had a similar, on a smaller scale. In my case, I built the team to serve me, and the tension on my team existed, and it became like a huge cultural almost like a cultural bankruptcy, because it was this like constant tension with me and the agents, because they were there to serve me and I was there to, like, I just had it totally backwards. So when you mention it, it's such solid to hear a guy just 18 months ago with the 300 million volume business have the same issues that I had at 100 million, that I could have avoided when I was at 20 million. If I just understood, like, it's easy to say servant leadership and read a book on it, and actually do it and care about your people at a very deep level and realize that their life is in your hands, versus like just work those buyer leads because I'm done working buyers. Like I can't do it anymore. I'll die. And so I think culture is such an easy thing to say, and it is the hardest thing to instill and stand by and bring people on with culture, but also to release people because they're a culture misfit and being okay with it. Any thoughts on that as I say that?
I think, one of the things that's culture is something that will create itself, and it's not something that you can plan. Essentially, it all comes from the people that you choose to work with and have on your team, and obviously selecting the right people for that, and then allowing that culture to grow. And eventually, I mean, our culture today is so incredibly strong to the point where it's self-policing itself, right? So if there's any negativity or anything like that, I mean, the culture will police itself. If somebody will come in where that's not necessarily a fit culturally, it's policing itself. Like they can tell pretty much within the first 2 weeks that person was the wrong hire. And it's quite fascinating to observe. And, so our job as on the leadership team is to obviously make sure that we do our best in selecting the right people. And you got to create an environment that's safe with no judgment, because everybody's different. Nobody's better than anybody else. And, just recently I was in Vegas, and I think you may have heard about this from Chris, where we had the general manager of the Vegas Golden Knights do a presentation for us. And they basically shared the framework of how they selected every single hire and player in the organization. And the number one key was low ego. And, that resonates a lot with what we are doing. Because, I mean, we all know if we have a team and somebody comes on the team with a big ego, that's a culture killer. And I think we need to have an awareness of that when we're running these teams and organizations or brokerages, that, it's nobody's better than anybody else. We are all here to serve each other and serve our clients, and nobody's better than anybody else. Really.
Yeah. That's
including
really
the leader.
Yeah, it's kind of like we've been really digging into. Patrick Lencioni has that book, Ideal Team Player, where he talks about hungry, humble, smart.
Mm-hmm.
Really, if you think, you obviously want hungry people at every position, just humility, and then the smart is that emotional intelligence. And I just think it's spot on. Anytime that there's been a misfit, it's a guy that comes in with this huge ego. He just drives my admin crazy, and it's like, how did I miss that? You're sometimes as a team leader, you're attracted to the production they can bring to the table, versus a culture misfit.
But you know what? When we sit down and interview these agents, I mean, everybody's selling themselves, right? Mm-hmm. So somebody can sit down in that interview, or the 2-3 interviews you may have, and they will sell you on what they can do. But then when they get in with the group, that's when you kind of get to see that, oh, that's a lone wolf. That's not something that fits within our culture and what we're doing, right? So, yeah, you know what? In the last few years, I've gone on quite the personal journey myself of self-development, and I've been an open book with my agents on the work that I've done myself, the books that I've read, and even taken my coach that I started working with 2 years ago and really brought him in with their leadership group, and he even comes up to our team once a quarter, and we do an event, and it's really been a huge impact in getting people to connect with the heart. Because really, I mean, it's all about the human experience, right? We want to ensure that our agents have a good experience, and so they can also create an incredible experience for all of our clients. And I think the better we have that emotional awareness about ourselves, the better we can understand our team members as well as our clients.
Yeah, that's awesome. Let's dig into the business a little bit. So kind of give us the landscape. You mentioned how many admin are you running inside sales? What does outside sales look like? What is a top agent selling your team? What's total production? Give us the kind of rundown of the current business.
So currently we're sitting with about 33 agents that are licensed. We have 5 ISAs, actually 4 ISAs, 1 admin, 1 social media coordinator, in-house videographer. We got director of operations, director of training and development. We have a productivity coach and in-house photographer, videographer. And then obviously outsource different marketing pieces as well. But that's essentially the group that we run here in Calgary.
And what is like a solid top agent produce in volume? And then what is a first full year agent produce?
You know, it all depends. Obviously, it's all up to the agent on what they can do. I mean, we've had agents that have done, 50 sales in their first year and, done about 20 million-ish. I was just actually looking at some numbers a couple of days ago. Year to date, we have 1 agent that's well over 26 million. Had 10 agents between 10 and 20 million in production this year. I think the top agent is on pace to sell about 90 homes this year on the team. But, also first year agents, last year we had a couple that did in the 40s in their first year.
Nice.
So it's really all up to the agent. And I mean, we all know that agents in this business, I mean, they all go through the cycles, right? They will put a lot of time and effort into prospecting. They get busy with clients. Obviously, what's the first thing that drops off is the prospecting. And then, when they finish obviously selling all the clients that they have lined up with, then they're like, oh, I got to get back to prospecting. So it's trying to create a steady, consistent flow of business for them, I think is the most challenging part of running a team.
Yeah, that's awesome. What's up? I'm live on a podcast right now. Here's my son. I might as well bring my son. So this is Justin in Canada. We're live on a podcast right now. So Anders is now part of a live podcast. This is why I do what I do. Anders, I'll be with you in a minute, okay, buddy? All right. Okay, she can't come over right now. All right, so when you look at the business now and you look at the landscape, and I don't know if it's different in Canada, but 3 to 5 years from now with technology, AI, big money coming into our industry, I don't know if that's impacting you like it is down here. The brokerage landscape changing and Compass and EXP and like, what do you feel most like solid about your business going into this next sort of, it's been called the 4th industrial revolution, right? So where do you feel most confident in your business?
What I feel most confident in my business right now is the brand awareness in our market. In the last few years, we have, since 2014, we've been in a downturn. And what I committed to during that time, like when it started, was double down on our marketing, really building a bigger brand in our marketplace. And to the point where, my goal is essentially to create such a strong brand in the marketplace where there's minimal sales language required by our agents to gain the business from the opportunities that are presented to them. And I feel that that's probably our strongest point right now. I mean, we are starting to get Zillow into our marketplace. They're trying to cross the wall that we've built. And, but Zillow is having a bit of a challenge because they wanted the data feed from CREA, which is a Canadian Real Estate Association, And that in itself, they said no to. So they said that they could get what we call up here a DDF feed, which they would have to send the leads back to the listing agents. And, Zillow, they don't want that. So they're starting to partner up with a few brokerages to send them their listings. I think they have so far gotten like 10,000 listings in all of Canada. And with the appeal that they're going to market the listings to the American buyers. But, I see what's going on down there with obviously big money in Zillow, and they're getting a lot of agents used to their platform and the CRM and all that kind of stuff and the ad spend. And I've even heard some rumblings lately that if you want to adjust your ad spend or reduce it by more than 10%, you're going to lose your premier agent status and they'll sell it to somebody else. So I'm happy we don't have that here in Canada yet. Obviously, there's big money coming in. And I'm not too sure how they will do here in Canada, because we had Rogers Media a few years ago, which is they're a $5 billion company. They actually tried to start a national portal in Canada, and they actually ended up shutting it down after 3 or 4 years. So we'll see how Zillow does. But from obviously there's a different landscape for you guys down there than it is up here. And we are going to see the technology come in up here, but there's still the human element to doing the real estate transaction. And I think we just got to embrace some of the technology to leverage our productivity and be more efficient. But, I don't think it's going to change our business too much. Yeah. Obviously, with the big money coming in and the instant offers and that kind of stuff, we don't have that up here yet. But we'll see what happens.
Yeah,
I'm just watching you guys.
Yeah. No, I think I've spent the day with Gary Keller, and not that he knows everything. His take is interesting. I mean, it's three shifts going on in the U.S. economic, regular market shift. Then there's the consumer shift, right? Consumers want instant everything and a level of service which we have to respond to, and then just the technology. I mean, AI, and that's a hockey stick sort of shift. In consumer, AI-driven consumer technology for real estate. And so a couple more questions, and then I'll let you get back to your busy day there. What's the best advice you've ever received about business?
I think the best advice I got when I first got in the business was always reinvest minimum 25% back into your business. And that is something I've done consistently. And I've also invested way more than 25% back into the business. I believe in, you got to constantly kind of keep building. And, when you have a team, you're essentially responsible for all those families and for them to provide for their families. And, it comes with a lot of pressure. And I think that, one of the things that a lot of people think that if they start a team, the business will come. And that is like the biggest, I don't know what you want to call it, but the wrong impression that people have is that I'm of the opinion that you should have the business, hire an admin, and really make yourself as productive as possible, because that's probably the most profitable business model in this industry, is being an individual agent with an admin. Then you can start adding on agents as long as you have the business to support those people. But for God's sake, don't build a team when you don't have the business to feed yourself. Yeah. I've had many agents reach out to me from across Canada and the US, and there's one guy I talked to, he wanted to pick my brain on starting a team. So I asked him how long he's been in the business. He said 6 months. I said, how many houses have you sold? He's like, 2. I'm like, you shouldn't even be thinking about a team.
You need to join a team.
Yeah. And at the same time, I mean, people should ask themselves, why do they want to build a team? Like, if they think that it's going to give them more freedom, I think they're wrong. it's going to give them more pressure. You know, I'm sure you can relate to this as well. It's a lot of stress.
Mhm.
You know, we essentially carry all the risk, all the exposure. We got to take the gambles on new marketing avenues, try them out, and see if they work. And if it doesn't, well, we are the ones that are going to eat those losses, right? So, you know, so it's, yeah, I was on a panel here in our brokerage a little while ago where they asked, you know, if you know what you know today, would you start a team all over again? And my answer was probably not, because personally, I don't like I mean, it comes with a lot of stress, and my goal for 2019 will be on how I can better manage my stress, because there's a lot of sleepless nights. And when you're running, you know, a marketing budget well into the six figures every month, and I always say, you know, I'm spending on marketing a month now what I used to dream of earning in a year when I got into the business. And the numbers are just insane. But, you know, it's, yeah, I'm a natural introvert, and if I had it my way, I'd be sitting in the basement, sitting on my computer and, you know, building websites or, you know, fiddling with systems and that kind of stuff. But, you know, to put myself out there on TV commercials, radio, and billboards and all that stuff, it's awkward for me.
Yeah, I feel the same way. I'd rather be the Wizard of Oz than, you know, the thing the Wizard of Oz created with the castle and you know, all of that stuff. I just want to be, like you said, in a basement where, you know, that'd be way better.
It's a lot more comfortable, right? But at the same time, you know, I'm learning to embrace that role, and that is just essentially the role that I've taken on for my team, is to be the person that connects with the community and creates the opportunities for the agents.
Yep.
And you know what? The more success you have, the more haters you have as well. And, you know, that's not fun as well.
Yeah, definitely have that thick skin. So last question here. So a lot of people in our industry, you know, they struggle. It's a really broken industry in so many ways. What advice would you give for an agent, you know, who's struggling right now? Just overall, with everything you know about your journey with your agents, where they struggle, like real tangible advice you can give a struggling agent right now.
You know, we all get overwhelmed, right? And when we look at where we are and where we want to go, we always tend to be like, oh man, how am I going to be able to accomplish that? What I would recommend to anyone is break it down into micro goals, because they are a lot easier to accomplish than when you want to basically, hey, I want to sell 25 million in a year. Break it down to, hey, I want to sell, you know, 5 million in a quarter, and then just break it down into micro commitments and micro goals, and focus on those on a daily basis. Track everything, hold yourself accountable, you know, and be consistent, because it's the inconsistency that creates failures.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's the entire roadmap for an agent's first 3 to 5 years, what you just said in the last minute. Yeah. Right. It's just, it's not rocket science at this point. It's not like it's not known how to sell 3 homes a month. You know, you break it down from how many people do I need to talk to every day, and what do I need to say on the phone, and, you know, get in front of them, what I need to present. So that's awesome.
And you know what? And drop the ego and listen.
Yeah.
Right. Because I think the better listener you are, the better you'll serve your clients. And, you know, there's so many times we'll sit down and people they talk too much. They say too much. You know, learn to listen to your clients and serve them at the highest possible level, because really we're in a business where we're here to help and serve our clients, and they're all humans just like you and I.
Yeah. And the flip side, because my first 5 years, I was barely surviving with 2 young kids and a wife, and I didn't take that approach, and it was burn and churn. And when you make that shift, though, every deal turns into multiple deals. Like it's good business too.
Oh yeah.
So, all right, brother. Well, I appreciate your time. This will be downloaded and listened to and serve a lot of folks. And just being real about your journey with quote unquote success, like you said. Where that left you, and I appreciate you being open about all of that. So thanks. If there's anything I can ever do for you, let us know. Real Estate B School thanks you. The listeners thank you. So I appreciate it, brother.
Thanks for having me on here, and it's an honor. And likewise, if I can help you or anyone else, just reach out.
Awesome. And if whatever happens with this midterm election or the next election, if anyone moves up there, I will be sure to send them your way.
We don't have any walls. We just have snow.
Yeah. All right. Thanks, brother.
All right. Thank you. Have a good one.